Welcome to the Milestones, Motivation, and Money podcast, a weekly conversation filled with stories of business, financial literacy, careers, leadership, and resilience. Setting and achieving goals is key, whether they are related to your finances, business, or career. I hope to empower you with these conversations, no matter where you are in life. I'm your host, Angel Radcliffe, and on this show, get ready to change your mindset and start your journey to achieve your lifelong goals. So if you need a little motivation to start your day or jumpstart your next project, tune in and be sure to join our community online at milestonesmotivationandmoney.com. Hey, welcome back to the podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in and happy Valentine's Day. This is a very special Valentine's episode. We'll be talking about the authority of law and love, and we have a very special guest as usual. So, of course, everyone knows the dating pool has pee in it. This is definitely nothing that's new, but there are so many people who are taking steps to do extraordinary and unordinary things to meet the love of their life. And our guest today has done one of those things. She went on a reality dating show. She's also an attorney, and I've been knowing her for a few years. We met some years back in a professional development class. Attorney Symone Redwine, who will be joining us today. Now, Simone, she's an attorney, a reality star. She was on Ready to Love Last Resort. It's a show that's featured on OWN TV. Simone's a graduate of Cornell Law School. Simone owns her law firm where she practices personal injury, wrongful death, and she represents clients for car wrecks and more. So amazing, beautiful soul, funny, hilarious. She also hosts a podcast, the Ages and Stages podcast with her new beau, and she has a legal podcast. Girl, is that legal? So make sure you tune in to both of those on YouTube, and let's get ready for some really good, fun conversation around love, law, money, and all that jazz. So let's welcome Simone to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you on because, girl, your personality is beyond amazing and the things that you've done. So I think this will be such a fun conversation around law and love and all of Simone.
Yes, let's do it.
So how about you start off and tell our listeners a little bit more about you and how you came into this place of where you are now and becoming an attorney.
Okay. So I grew up always knowing that I wanted to be an attorney. I'm lucky in that, there are some kids who go through high school, they don't know what they wanted to do. I always knew, and so did my friends. I was like a hood lawyer. I was like the lawyer you didn't have to pay because she probably didn't know exactly what she was doing, all throughout college, high school, all of that. For example, I knew I had a gift when my homegirl, she runs into my dorm room. She was like, okay, so hypothetically, what should I do if hypothetically, and I don't think she understood what the word hypothetically meant, I bricked my baby daddy and threw a brick through his window. It didn't hit nobody or nothing. It just bricked it. And then I ran off. And I was like, so you bricked his house? She was like, hypothetically. And then I gave her advice and she didn't go to jail. So I was like, oh my gosh, I have a gift. And it would kind of continue. So friends would get into binds, even just it started back in high school, but college and so forth. And so I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer. And I had decided that when I was young because I wanted a job where I could help people, but I wouldn't be poor. Because, it's a lot of jobs where you're helping people, but you don't get paid what you're worth, like teachers, for example. So I earned a full scholarship to the University of Pittsburgh to study finance. And I loved Pitt. It was the perfect school for me and for my goals. And whenever I mentor students, I always say, major in what you feel like you can make A's in. Do not go to college and major in political science. They really tried to put me on a pre-law political science track. And I said, hell to the no. And they were like, well, why not? And I said, well, because what is political science? They kept trying to get me to get into political science. And I said, well, what is it? And they said, well, it's the study of politics. I said, well, how much money do they make? And they got to stutter it. I said, nope, I don't want that. Sign me up for finance. And so ultimately I majored in finance. I went off, I got a scholarship to Cornell Law School, and I focused on real estate law and business law there, as well as death penalty, capital punishment work. And fast forward to now, I have my own practice. I practice personal injury law, car wrecks, wrongful death, and so forth. I pride myself on I bankrupt multi-million-dollar medical device companies, among others, who make dangerous products that kill kids. That's fun. And now I'm just at a place where being my own boss, I get to set my own schedule and I get to define happiness for myself.
And it's so amazing when you work for yourself. I've been down that road of full-time entrepreneurship a few times. And for you to own your own law firm, it goes back to the basics of business. So when you think about learning, how do you actually start a business? How do you get an LLC? And how do you separate your personal finances from your business finances? Who taught you that information?
Undergrad. No, it was undergraduate business studies, which is also why I'm a huge advocate for studying business. If you want to become an attorney, I firmly believe you should take business classes. If you're not the type to want to be a business major, that's okay, but you should certainly take those classes, because I think a lot of attorneys make the mistake, or law students make the mistake of going into law because they think that it's a opportunity for a stable income and a stable profession as someone's employee. Wrong. The only thing that's stable about practicing law is if you do it for yourself, because you can control the variables like your income streams. And so I did learn a bit from undergraduate business school, but then I had to add to it and really take courses, make mistakes, and those kind of things to learn about things like the value of an LLC. Law school helps, but real life helps you put it into context.
Oh, absolutely. And, I always say we have to take advantage of the resources we have to educate ourselves in these various areas. And some people would not put that correlation together of business and law, but no matter the type of law, you have to understand the basics of business. Thinking back, if you can think back to when you first started your company and when you wanted to start, of course, entrepreneurship is not pretty. It's not one of those things that's perfect. Hindsight, what struggles did you have in the very beginning?
Gosh, first of all, I was a terrible boss. Oh my gosh. Because I'm very ADD. So I have a lot of ideas in my head. The challenge I have is stopping, putting them in writing, and creating assignments for my employees to execute. So at my height, I had 6 employees. And one, I realized that was far too much. But I also realized you cannot have employees if you're unwilling to sit down and develop policies and procedures in writing, not just the ones in my head. So I had to create policies and procedures manuals so that everyone knew the rules. I'm a rule follower, so I should have known better, I feel like. But for example, what's the rule on how to request time off? Well, when you have a small business, initially I didn't even think about that because I was accustomed to, I see everybody every day. Our office is small. But there came a day when somebody asked for bereavement leave because their dog died, and I darn near lost it. I was like, are you kidding me? But for them, their dog was a kid, and they were like, well, I'm telling you today, I'm not coming in today because my dog died, but we had a big motion due. So for me, it was realizing that when you own a small business like a law firm, you don't just get to practice law. I have to be an office manager. I have to do these different sub assignments. And so that's when I realized, I realized, if you're not going to do it right, Simone, hire someone who is. So there were definitely a number of trials and tribulations with that, as well as one of the biggest things was realizing all clients are not good clients, and figuring out what does it look like when a client is more expensive, when it's more expensive to have them than not, and then how to properly decline. Because as a new business owner, you're so concerned about paying your bills, making your mortgage, making your payroll, that I had a tendency to take all the client, everyone that came. And when you do that, sometimes you realize, well, you often realize that some of those clients, they don't pay their bills on time. They are not reliable, especially because most of my cases are contingency, meaning I don't get paid until I win money for you. So it was definitely a journey. But as I've worked through those things, then it became fun, because it was definitely not fun for a number of years.
Oh, wow. I can imagine. And, I remember when I was in that place of building a team and you have to build those policies and procedures, it can be a bit overwhelming,
Mhm.
especially when you're growing faster than you anticipate.
Right.
But it brings so much joy as well, just to build something for yourself and where you're not having to deal with things of a workplace. And I'm sure before you started your own law firm, you work for some others. So was that the working for other people and seeing maybe they were doing something wrong? Was that sort of the driving factor for you to start your own company?
Oh, for sure. I don't like working for people that are stupider than me. That's just like a mantra and a rule.
Oh my
Like,
goodness.
I can't tell you how frustrating it is to work for someone who is stupider than you and gets paid more than you do. Because that stupid person then gives you stupid instructions and wastes your time frequently. And in the legal space, it's particularly frustrating because as an attorney, I don't like losing. I don't want to lose. So honestly, a large part of that frustration for me came from the fact that my boss is a philosophy major. So all he cares about is the theory of law and the legal concepts and all of these things. Whereas I'm like, what about the bottom line and the dollar? And in the end, even though the law says we're right, if our client, by pursuing this lawsuit, is going to lose money because of negative PR, negative publicity, social media attacks, blah, 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 then we shouldn't do this stupid thing, right? And, the client loses money, et cetera, then it comes to a point where I'm like, this is a waste of my time. So I had multiple instances where, I had to miss I missed my sister's graduation from college and different things like that for work. And then I realized that my work wasn't even valued. So it's kind of like having a boyfriend who doesn't appreciate you. No matter what you do, it's not like you have the ability to make him appreciate you. He's either going to wake up and do it or not. And so I just got to the point where I realized I'm in an environment where no matter how hard I work, they're going to ask me to work harder and they're still not going to value my talents. So I just better create an environment where I'm valued. And that's what I did.
Wow. And, for someone who's listening, that might be some encouraging and motivating words for them, because we do have to take that time to self-reflect and figure out if we're in the right space, if the people surrounding us are really treating us the way we should be treated, if we're paid the equitable pay that we should be receiving, and all these things that really make us who we are in our careers or drive us towards those things in our business. And you talked about a few things that you've overcome working for other people, and then things that you've overcome in your business. I want to take it all the way back to college. So you went to Cornell University, which is a prestigious school, and being a minority at Cornell, I know now their numbers are pretty low with when we look at diversity, especially for the African American population. I believe it's 4, maybe 5%. So probably when you were in school, it's probably a bit lower. So what was that like? And what challenges did you have to overcome at Cornell Law School?
So a lot of the challenges actually came from white students who decided I didn't belong. So I very quickly had to explain to them, hey, listen, I am here for your benefit. I am here because they have decided that you, ma'am, are so ignorant, are so isolated, and are so naive in your view of the world that just by having me in the classroom with you, you're going to graduate a little less ignorant and be of a little bit more value to the legal community. Therefore, that is in part why I am here. And therefore, it would behoove you to shut up, listen. You don't have to agree with my viewpoint or what I have to say, but you do have to recognize that girls like me will be on your juries. Girls like me will be your clients or opposing you. And because I come from a background and a demographic, I'm speaking specifically to like the girls I went to school with who were from Park Avenue and who would complain that their dad wouldn't send a helicopter to the Ithaca airport to take them home for Christmas break. Those girls. That just my presence makes you a better person. So I don't want to hear your lip. I don't want to hear nothing about this. Oh, if I were Black, I could have gotten into Harvard. I don't want to hear any of that. If you're Black, you would still be here. If you were Black, you wouldn't even be here. Because most of the reason you're here is because your daddy bought the amphitheater on campus. So that example is just simply an example of how I had to step foot with far more confidence than everyone else, because I knew that that there were other students there whose job was just to break down mine, because they felt I stole their opportunity at life, or that girls who look like me stole their opportunity to go to Harvard or to go to better schools or have more opportunities. When in fact, Cornell understood and appreciates diversity, yes, but I'm there because I'm awesome. I'm so brilliant because I've gotten here on my own, and you've gotten here carried on the backs of Daddy Warbucks, your father. Like, I really went to school with Arthur Anderson's son, like the accounting company. I think they went belly up doing some fraud. You know how those corporate scammers are. But I think because I walked with such confidence, other people were like, dang, that's Simone. That girl is fearless. Because I also made the most of my experience in that I was determined to get every dollar's worth. For example, I would ask the questions other people were afraid to ask, because everybody there except for me, wanted to fake it till they make it. You know, they wanted to really pretend like they knew what was going on. And the professor would be like, okay, any questions? It would be like a huge amphitheater, like 100 kids. And no one would say anything. And I would say, me. And I would say, listen, I really didn't understand your example of this versus this. Can you elaborate? And I remember one time the professor was like, all right, can anybody help Miss Redwine? No one answered. I said, see, professor, they don't know either. And we would continue. So it was very different in that it was a very narrow, small Black community, including my class had 16 Black people, 16, 1 6. That was it. So, needless to say, dating was challenging. There was like one cute guy. So of course, and so there was the dating, and then there was, of course, being different in that minority status. But what I also appreciated is Cornell they had a holistic perception of diversity. So there was also a lot of economic diversity. Had a whole bunch of real smart, poor white kids. And those were my favorites. Because we get together, we complain about the rich ones all together. We got to, and we'd be like, y'all heard Mary complaining about that helicopter. We'd be like, shoot, I'd be happy if my daddy sent me a Greyhound pass.
Right. And it's all about perspectives. And so, with you being in that particular environment, I'm sure it definitely shaped you into the woman you are today, and even the obstacles that you have been through. But can you name one particular instance throughout your life, any obstacles or challenges that you face that sticks with you on a daily basis?
So one thing that I always realize is never take a job without understanding your worth. So when I graduated, the economy had crashed. It was 2008. And I had been told all these horror stories about how Black associates really do not last in big firms. So big firms were significant because if you could get into one in 2008, when I was 25 and I knew nothing, fresh out of law school, my starting salary was $150,000. I said, wait a minute, y'all gonna pay me $150,000 to keep my panties on? You sure? Because I'm gonna do it. And they were like, yes. I was like, great. This is phenomenal. Completely legal. I knew nothing. 25-year-old, $150,000. So basically I was rich. So I take the job and I keep trying to figure out why is it that they keep saying, come up with an exit plan. You got 3 years and they're going to kick you out of there. Well, I later came to learn that kind of how it works is all the firms want to be able to say, we're committed to diversity. So they like to be able to say that they had, a certain number of African-American attorneys there. The problem is what they do is they recruit them fresh out of law school because we're cheap. And then they let us go around our third year practicing, generally saying, oh, it wasn't a good fit, meaning we didn't like to play golf, or they couldn't understand, they didn't want to chill with us, would generally be the issues. And we wouldn't be given the benefit of the doubt a lot of times, just as far as work was related. So long story short, I got into around my second year, economy was low, and the work started to dry up. Well, I learned that's one of the ways that they try to force you out of a firm or make you think you're not good enough and that you should quit. So needless to say, my confidence I developed at Cornell reinforced to me, that I was the ish. I made Dean's List. I did quite well. So when the second year comes about and I'm working on this all male team, right? And the good work starts coming but they're not passing it to me. Well, what I discover is one night I'm looking for a memo that I had done on the work computer, and I just put my name in and I search. And what I discover is part of the reason why I'm there, where they keep African-American and other minorities always on staff at these big firms, is because they have, in order to get big contracts, they have to submit diverse teams. So when I searched, what I found is these RFPs, which were like requests for productions or requests for proposals, where we are proposing, let's say, to Viacom, to MTV, to the New York Giants, that we want to get a contract with them. And then we say, look, this is our diverse team. For these different teams, for the big, sexy employers that demanded diversity, like Coca-Cola or FedEx, my face was on almost all of these. And they'd say, look at this cute little Black girl. Look at this cute little Ivy League Black girl. We've got her. She's at our firm. This is the kind of girl that's going to be on your diverse team. But yet and still, I didn't have any work. I was all dried up, but they got the contract. So I was not going to let them make me think I was less than. Because if I'm not awesome, why are you putting my name on these requests for proposals? And more importantly, why are you winning them on my back? So what I did was I printed out some of the sexiest ones that they got. I went into the managing partner's office and I said, hey, just wanted to let you know about my availability and that I'm really excited to take on some of these new projects. I understand that you guys just got a new contract with, let's say, the New York Giants. You got a new contract with the New York Giants and I am excited to staff it. They're like, oh, thanks, but that team has been staffed. I said, oh, well, what about the Coca-Cola deal? Oh, we're all good there too. And FedEx? I said, well, it seems that there's some space for me, because then I print out all the RFPs. They said, well, I see that the proposals all included me, yet I haven't been involved. So I'm not sure. Let me know, who is it that I need to talk to, or will you speak to them on my behalf? On Monday, I am ready to transition to some new projects and add them to my schedule. And his mouth fell open. I think he might have sharked himself a little bit. He didn't know I knew my worth. And once he knew that I knew, he knew they couldn't pull that stuff they do at the end of year review that says, hey, I just don't think this is really working. I think you should start looking elsewhere. No, I'm looking right here. Because what you don't want is for me to let Coca-Cola and this person and FedEx and everyone to know that you are just using my brown face and our brown faces to get the deals and give them to your homeboy's son. So that is one obstacle that I overcame. Once I had that, I have no problem with getting what I wanted, because they feared my intellect. I wasn't aggressive, as they often define Black women. I wasn't nasty or any of that. I outwitted them. And they fear a witty, intelligent Black woman.
Absolutely. And, just listening to you, you definitely are an outspoken person, and you're telling how you're really going against the grain, or how you went against the grain in some of these instances. Now, someone who's listening they may be saying, oh, well, this is a modern woman and she's modern. Do you consider yourself a modern woman?
I don't really know what modern, like, what they mean by that. I mean, if it means, I use tampons and take birth control, absolutely. But I still want my man to take out the trash and mow the lawn. I don't want to be equal. I don't want to take turns mowing the lawn. But I do believe that I can do a job, most jobs, as good as a male. I can't firefight as good as a guy because I don't work out. But if that's what modern means, but I'm also very nurturing. I really enjoy being a woman. I enjoy being allowed to sit in my femininity. I enjoy in a relationship being allowed to be a woman. I frequently used to complain about not being allowed to nurture, like to be the woman, because there are some men who are sometimes resistant to nurturing, maybe because they didn't get enough. But I certainly do believe in that balance.
I know the definition. It can, well,
it's like Kevin Samuel's definition.
Well,
does that mean?
Not the Kevin Samuels, but it's a bit convoluted. So everyone has their own definition. But I guess in this particular instance, when we think about the modern woman, so many people have said, oh, feminism and women's rights and all of these things have evolved to where women want to do all of these things that 60, 70 years ago, people would say the man should be doing. And so some people will consider themselves a modern woman if you're a woman who you're taking on this career, like you're an attorney. And most people will say, hey, that's not for a woman. Or 50, 60 years ago, they'll say, that's not for a woman. And you're outspoken and you stand up to status quo. And you're sort of redefining what it is to be a woman. But everyone has their own definition. It sounds like you definitely have your own. I can say that. But
I definitely am a leader. And to the extent it includes leading and running her own business, heck yeah. And my boyfriend really, really loves it. He's very happy about it.
We're getting close to get into some of those love and relationship questions, and oh gosh, as we sort of transition to that topic, how does sort of being in that position, I would consider being an attorney a powerful position. How does being in a powerful position impact your love life or relationships?
Well, it definitely reduces the number of men I can date. It reduces the quantity, but absolutely not the quality. And I say that because I've learned, like, I cannot date a man without a college degree. Now, there might be an exception, a super exception, if it's like perhaps someone who grew up as a child actress and had always been in entertainment or something like that. But when I've dated men without degrees, they've really mistreated me. And I don't know if it's because, well, part of it was I felt like they felt the need to continually show me that they were smarter than me or as smart as me. They would frequently make reference to, well, even though I didn't go to college, I sure know such and such, or talk about how valuable, much more valuable they feel common sense is than book smarts. And they equate book smarts with, going to college. They are very addicted to money because money was what they would use to feel like I'm worthwhile. Like, no, I didn't go to college, but I make more money than college educated people do. So therefore, this is why I'm great. And this is why I'm of value. And so I definitely had to just stop dating them. I made numbers of exceptions, and you'll have people out there who say, you shouldn't eliminate a whole group of people. Yeah, sometimes you have to, because first of all, I can't date everybody. That would be gross. And so that was one aspect of it. And then the second aspect of it is men will say sometimes that they want a partner and but sometimes they really don't. So you really have to look at their actions. So like I dated a guy who he was an engineer and worked at a factory and could not understand for the life of him why I would check my phone at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, almost implying I must be cheating. And I just decided, anybody as dumb as you're behaving, I can't deal with anyway. So this won't work. I definitely understand.
And I think some of
Yeah.
those guys that are not as accomplished, they have to have that mindset to date up. And if they don't, you're like, what
Yeah.
the heck? It gets difficult. The more successful you become, the more accolades, dating pool definitely gets a bit smaller. And
Hmm.
men are intimidated by successful women. That's always been my perspective. At least the men that I've encountered, intimidated by successful women, unless of course they're successful themselves.
Right. Yeah. Right. Absolutely. And I think that's basically what it bears down. I had a friend who used to have a crush on me, and he said, Simone, just wait till I finish my master's degree and I start making real money. He was like, because right now you out earn me. And I can't be with a woman who out earns me because I don't want to do dishes. And I feel like I have to do dishes and household chores if she out earns. And he was dead serious. And then he got a really great position and started making a lot of money and circled back around. And I just remember thinking, this is not going to work because his worth is attached to how much he earns. And that, for me, that can never work in a relationship or a person.
So thinking about, professional events that you attend that are specifically for attorneys, I would imagine women are less seen, or the percentage of women is astronomically less than the number of men. Has that ever been an issue in your relationships, just that you work in a male dominated environment?
So what's interesting is, while it is male dominated, I like Black men. So as it relates to lawyers, I'm not sure how off the numbers are, Black women versus Black men. I think we might be edging up to where there might be more Black female attorneys than male. However, I definitely know that majority of the Black males that I meet in the legal industry, they're married. So they are there. A lot of them don't even care that they're married, but they are there. And by it being so male dominated, one thing I absolutely do experience is that they're big flirts, and they're not really good with boundaries. Like, if they find that you're attractive, an attractive attorney, all hell, everything goes to the wind. They will flirt, they will be inappropriate. So you really have to be able to just stand in your confidence. I generally find some funny, witty way to politely decline and then kind of go on my way. But there's definitely more male, I would say, energy, charisma, and more male dominance as far as the leadership roles within the law and positions of power, for sure.
And so I want to get into, I think this is a really good topic. So prenups. So being a woman who is successful, and, you seem to have dated a variety of men, and I can't, continue without saying you were on a reality show for dating. You were on Ready to Love.
Yeah.
And I watched every episode. I was like, oh, I can't miss this episode. I have to see what's about to happen.
I love it.
And from the first episode, I was looking and I was like trying to pinpoint the people. But when you think about dating later in your 30s, and, you've made some successful accomplishments in life, and you're wanting to sort of move forward, should women who are in this successful, should women who are sort of at this age and have become successful and they're worried about who they're going to end up with, should they look into a prenup?
Sure should. Pre and post nup. See, a lot of people don't realize the prenup. Yeah. So prenup only protects what you own prior to marriage. Post nup protects whatever you're going to gain during the marriage, which you don't even know. So, for example, perfect example, Dr. Dre. Dr. Dre had a prenup. That only protected the rights to his songs, his royalties, interest in those kinds of things, which he owned prior to marrying old girl. But Beats by Dre, honey, it was open season because he did not have a post nup, right? So that's how she got, I think now she gets like $125,000 a month for the rest of her life, or until she remarries. But I do think it makes sense too, because I believe in keeping honest people honest. By that, I mean, the thing about divorce is this. all these people like, but I love him. If you really love me, you're thinking about our end, da, 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 da. Here's the thing. If I divorce you, I'm not divorcing you. I'm divorcing the person that you turned into. I'm divorcing you because who I loved doesn't exist anymore. And my loyalty is to who I'm committed to and who I'm agreeing to now. And I think that's fair. So the prenup is if you marry Dr. Jekyll, you marry Mr. Hyde, he becomes Dr. Jekyll, and vice versa. And so I think, and also a lot of times, modern days, a lot of people have children before they've already married. You owe it to your children. If you're marrying someone that's not their parent, you owe it to your children to protect the resources that you're going to be leaving or potentially leave to them. Because when you don't have a prenup and then you start a new business or a postnup and you start a new business and you put your blood, sweat, and tears into it, let's say it becomes Etsy and y'all divorce, your child doesn't get the other half. Your ex-husband and his new mistress do. That's how people end up on Dateline. Okay, I watch a lot of crime stories, and I have certainly thought about killing a person or two. I've never done it because I like my freedom. But yes, those are some of the things that you can put in place to not only protect yourself, but also your legacy.
Something I've seen in the news, other things that are sort of related to law. I've seen people who were a mistress end up being sued for breaking up a marriage. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that. I thought that was so interesting. I'm like, this is a law in some states. You can sue someone because they cheated with your spouse. And I was like, what? When did this? So what are your thoughts on that? I don't even know what the law is called.
Right. So I know that North Carolina, I believe, is one state. And then California has some version of it, because I remember that guy who owned the LA Clippers, the old fat white man, and he had the black mistress. She caught him on camera saying the N-word and released the footage. He owned the Clippers, and as a result, he had to give up his interest in the Clippers, but he gave it up to his wife. So it's like, this is dumb. And she sued the mistress because basically he used some of the marital funds to buy her a car and a house and this and that. First of all, gotta respect the gamesmanship. Very wise. But I think it's such an antiquated law because in the end, it pretty much only punishes the woman and the man gets out scot-free. Yeah, I think that's certainly one of those outdated laws, because nowadays, divorce can actually take a really long time. So you could be in a situation where he tells you he's separated, he tells you he's in the middle of a divorce and that it's over, shows you this divorce paperwork, but some way they resalvage the relationship. And in the meantime, you guys are living together, he's, paying your bills and helping take care of you, and you end up in the situation. So, I feel like it's all that stuff is just risky and it's all hilarious. I would like to see more stories and more shows about it because I like watching train wrecks. But I certainly think that's one of those types of laws that definitely should be updated and shouldn't exist anymore.
Wow. I always see the stories and I'm always interested to hear how that even goes. But, you mentioned something about someone cheating and buying someone something. And I think that takes us to the topic of money and relationships and, not only, managing what's happening in a marriage and how things dissolve with a prenup, but going all the way back to dating. I always tell people you have to understand your spouse's financial situation before you get a little bit more serious. You have to understand, do they work where they said they work? Do they make the amount of money they said they were working? What's their credit look like? And I saw your podcast episode where you and your boyfriend looked at each other's credit report. And I was like, this is so bomb because so many people miss that. And it's like, you have to, at this particular age, I'm like, look, I can't walk with you for a year or two and help you fix your credit. But so when you think about relationships and as it relates to walking into a marriage and prenup and all of these things, how should someone walk into that situation to discuss their financial position?
Great question. Definitely, I think hold off until you guys are ready to be in a committed relationship, boyfriend and girlfriend. You will run a man, you will run him off to Africa. He will go as far away from you as he can if you start doing that while you're just in the initial talking stage, I'll call it. But when you get into that stage where you think you're about to be boyfriend or girlfriend, check his temperature or her temperature and say, finances are a really important thing to me. If you feel like you're ready for us to be in a committed exclusive relationship, that's definitely a conversation that we need to have so that we can see if we're even on the same page. And I think when you do that, it certainly sets the tone, and it helps you guys know where you're at. But also, if someone is just not open to discussing that at all, that's a red flag. Also, for me, if they talk about it too early, I was on a first date with a guy. 5 minutes in, he bought me a drink and he was like, "So tell me, how much money do you make?" What? Boy, bye. Get away from me, weirdo. Get away from me, weirdo. And the conversation continued and he confirmed his weirdness, and that didn't work out. But I also think it's important to explain to the other person the why, because this may be the first time they've ever had that type of a conversation. So you have to do it delicately. And then also understand a portion of their hesitation could be because they're embarrassed about theirs. So let them know. It's also important to let them know this isn't about how much you make. This is about, I really want to start with just understanding our credit scores and our credit history, because it tells a story of what you've been through in your life, at least the last 7 to 8 years, right? And I think distinguishing, I'm not asking about what you make. I want to learn about your spending habits. So let's consider exchanging credit reports and discussing them. And the reason that I say this is I dated a poor person a few years ago. Okay. All the attributes, he went to a super high ranked exclusive school, very handsome. He reiterated to me buku times. He worked in finance. We met drunk on an island, one party weekend. That's another story. And he decided that he fell in love in the club with me and wanted to move to Dallas from where he lived. So we spoke and I was very clear. I was like, I'm open to it. And I said, but listen, if you were to move to Dallas, I don't do shacking. You could stay with me 2 weeks, then you would need to get a place. He comes to Dallas, he stays for 2 weeks, he doesn't get a place. I'm like, what's the deal? Ultimately, what I learned is his credit was so bad, he had both a foreclosure and an eviction on his credit history. 40 years old. No, thank you.
And you know what? And something else that, when I am speaking to women about dating, relationships, and money, in addition to looking at the credit report, I'm always like, look, you better look this man up, get his background check. And I know you've done that. So I was like, oh my God, we think exactly alike. But also I'm thinking like child support, because if you
I got a trick for that. Okay. Y'all, for the background check, go to benverified.com. benverified.com. I think it might charge you like $12.99. I can't remember. If you want just one, you can get that person, you can get their background. Also, you can just go to the local county records, criminal records, put their first and last name in, pop them in, and you'll see what's there. But for the child support is so important. Each state has like a most wanted list. I definitely dated a guy, put his name in the system. And that sucker popped out. He was Louisiana's most wanted. I said, God damn it. And I thought I finally got a man with green eyes. I was so mad.
That's such a good point, because I tell people, find out, where that person has lived and look in all those county databases. That information is free, but also, the Ben Verified. My friends think I'm crazy. They're like, you look up everyone. I'm like, look, you don't know. And we're getting older. You don't know what people have done in their lives. I think that's like a number one tip for women, especially to understand the legal aspect. But then, when you're wanting to get serious, understanding what am I walking into? Because am I going to be helping you pay down all this debt, or someone who doesn't have a good relationship with their child's mother? I always say, my thing, I don't mind dating a man with kids, but I always say, hold on, like, are you being sued for child support, or are you just, are y'all in agreement? Because I don't want my wages garnished.
Right. No, absolutely. So, and my thing is, I don't date men with kids unless they're divorced.
Mm-hmm.
That's my personal thing, because I was raised in a 2-parent home. I don't date men who just run out here just spreading their seeds and walking down the street. I like men who plan their future and plan their families. It's very important to date a man, for me, that plans his family. Although I don't, at this point, we're older, good men are good men. But I strongly advise girls. I dated this guy because I was serious, and I've always been clear that I only date men who are divorced with children, because I want to know you married her, you took care of your family, you gave it a good try, and it didn't work. I don't want to know that you impregnate all your girlfriends. And in this particular case, I was dating this guy, and he told me he had 3 children with his ex-wife. Not a problem. But one day, I was like, hey, what are you doing? He lives in another city sometimes. He lives in New Orleans. And he showed me a picture. He was like, hey, I'm helping my daughter with her homework. And he sends me a picture. Well, the homework, her last name wasn't his last name. I said, why is her last name whatever it is? He's like, oh, sometimes she does that when she's mad at me. She'll put her mom's last name on her paperwork. I was like, I don't believe you. So I called the state attorney general's office. So, because that's who, has all the child support paperwork. So I was like, hey, I want to get a record of so-and-so's child support payments and their child support orders, if they're, under any order. And they were like, oh, are you his attorney? And I was like, no. They're like, well, I can't release this unless you're his attorney. And I was like, listen, I am not his attorney, but I am a attorney. And potentially I have a huge settlement for him. He could be coming into a lot of money, i.e. like me, my bank account, my assets. And I am concerned that, he may be on the hook for some monies, and I would hate for him to get the money when there are children in the state of Texas who would be going without. Really, this law actually applies to, like, honestly, if there's like a car wreck settlement, but the guy child support, you have to pay off the child support before you cut the guy a check. I knew this law existed, so I just kind of insinuated that that's what I was relying on. So it was a Black lady on the other side of the line. I knew, because I know our voices. And so I heard her, she was like, hold on, sis. She was like, okay. She came back to the phone. She was like, all right, you got a pen and some paper? I said, yes, ma'am. She was like, okay, write this down. Keisha Jenkins versus my ex's name. Cause number, Order to pay $100 a month child support arrears in the amount of $25,872. I was like, God damn. She was like, and Tiffany Jenkins versus ex-boyfriend's name. Order to pay child support in amount of $68 a month. Child support arrears in amount of $10,000. I said, oh my gosh, thank you. She said, and LaQuavia Edwins versus ex-boyfriend's name. Child support award of $125 a month. Child support arrears in amount of $51,000, such and such and such. She goes, oh, and sis, I recommend you also contact the state of Louisiana. I said, oh my God. I said, so wait a minute. Okay, this is 3 case numbers. So does this mean 3 children? She said, nope, it means 3 baby mamas.
Oh no. Wow.
So instead of him having 3 kids, I ultimately learned he had a minimum of 7 that I was aware of. Because the 3 that I actually knew of, he was not on child support for those 3. So this was 3 more. And then Louisiana had him as Louisiana's most wanted for like 2 hours. So ladies, I just say this today, one way you can find out about the arrears, call and act like you have a personal injury car wreck settlement for a guy.
Oh man. Well, you know what? That's so funny, but it's so unfortunate that men lie about their children, or they lie about these different situations. And I want to go back to your being on the reality show. I know sometimes it's said, the saying is, you have to kiss a lot of frogs before you find a prince. And I've been following you online, and it seems like you found your Prince Charming. So I definitely want you to shed a little light on the experience of what it was like to be on a dating show.
It was definitely a once in a lifetime experience. I would definitely say that. I think it was super exciting for me because I was on Ready to Love, and Ready to Love at that point was a show. I was a super fan. I had watched every single episode. And previously it had been in Atlanta. And I always say as I'd watch it, I was like, man, I'd love to be on this show, but I'm never going to move to Atlanta. So, there's no chance. So when a friend of mine was like, hey, would you ever consider doing a dating reality show? I was like, I don't know. What's it called? She said, Ready to Love. I was like, girl, that's my show. So I applied. Once I got a call back, I was like, oh, I got this. I got this, coach. But so what it was like was it was definitely dating on steroids. It was extremely intense because on my season, it was during COVID. So they moved us to a resort and we filmed on site at a resort. So it was cameras in your face every day. It was literally being on every day as far as like, being taped and photographed. But in the end, I think the best part was I had an environment where all the men were pre-screened, as we just discussed. They were very, very handsome and they were kind. Like I didn't have any a-holes on my show. And I don't really believe that they generally cast them anyway, because a-holes are so unlikable on TV generally. So yeah, it was a really good experience overall. Certainly challenging. Definitely something that can kind of the sentiment, the feeling could never be replicated. And yeah, I had a ball.
Now, when you were on the show, from the first episode, I think the meet and greet, you and Rashid had an interaction, and I was like, "Oh, they are so cute!" And it was the most hilarious like interaction. I think it went viral online, but even my mom was talking about it. Like, it was so cute. But as the show went on, like I was looking at the connections, and I was like, "They look so good together." And then the date in the truck, and so I was like screaming at the TV every time he was talking about the other girl, the one that had ghosted him before. And I was like, and I guess the audience, if you haven't watched it, go watch the show. It's on OWN, Ready to Love Last Resort. But I will say that you were voted off the show. And I was like, are they? And I was like, these people have lost their minds. Because I was looking at some of the other ladies and looking at some of the other guys and the connections. And I'm like, what? I'm like, how does this show process? How are these decisions made? These people have lost their mind. But I was happy to see that after the show, you sort of reconnected with one of the castmates.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm like, when is the wedding? So y'all look so good together. And it's like the on-screen chemistry. You're doing the podcast via YouTube. And when you first came on there, I was like, okay, maybe they're just friends. But I was like, no, they're sitting too close together.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, it was. So she's referring to Rashid, was one of my castmates. I was on season 3 of Ready to Love. Actually, if you look on DVR, I think it comes up as season 2. It's called The Last Resort, is what they refer to that season as, The Last Resort, because we were on a resort. And yeah, so Rashid, it was so typical of my dating style, which is I find who I like. I totally walk in my femininity. I let him know I'm interested. And then I let him take the lead from there, because he's either going to lead or not. And you can't be with me if you're not a leader. Like, I'll go find someone who is. And Rashid is an exotic car broker. He does like car sales for different exotic cars. And so us both being business owners has been really interesting, fun, and challenging, because we have a lot of free time together, but we also work a lot in similar environments. So it was really exciting. There have only been like 3 or 4 couples that have come from the show, but there's been like 5 seasons. So basically almost like one a season. And we were one of them. And it was definitely a shocker, because we didn't actually end the season together as a couple. Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to know, from you being on the show, do you think that has enhanced your work portfolio and outside relationships?
I definitely have met a number of more people from having been on the show. I've met a number of more people from having been on the show. I've definitely made a lot more friends. Work-wise is such a good question. And work-wise, I certainly have had more clients. That exposure has been very positive. So it really just varies. I mean, like, you get some positive feedback, you get some negative feedback, but even with the negative feedback, I have to just remind myself, like, they don't know me. They're not talking about me. They're talking about the portrayal of me that they saw on television. And I'm okay with that because I can't control that. So I'm okay with that.
Any downsides you think from being on reality TV?
Sure. I mean, yeah, for like some of my castmates, for sure. I'm just like, some of them are like crazy in real life. So it's like,
I won't name any names of who I think
right.
it is.
Yeah.
But it was a couple people I was side-eyeing on that season. So
oh yeah. Yeah.
oh.
So that's always something. And it was just like, yeah, I think that would be the main thing. Is just also is just like the inability to control, what people do see is challenging too. And understanding that the negative feedback that you're getting, especially in my case, because in my case, I did the first season, but they knew they wanted me to come back for a second season. So there was a very limited amount that I was shown on TV and a limited amount of my personality that was shown. Therefore, you didn't get to see, like, people who know me, they were like, that's not like you. Or I didn't get to see, your outgoingness, your funniness. Like, no one would know that I was like a hilarious person in real life. But it was because their expectation was, oh, we're going to bring her back and you'll see the rest of her character development. So I definitely was a bit salty at my depiction initially. So I guess a negative would be, like, if you don't like how you're depicted, there's literally nothing you can do about it. That's definitely a scary
editing.
aspect.
That's one thing you can't control now.
Right.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I know we're nearing the end of the show, and you shared so many gems as it relates to your background and starting a business and money, making sure you're checking that credit report if you're dating someone and how to look for child support. But I want to ask this question. So this is a show question, then we'll get into some last words. But
okay.
A part of my brand, with me being a financial educator, I created a workbook called Falling on a Budget. It's a part of the brand, and that phrase has been around for years, even before
I love it.
I started to use it. But when you think of that phrase, falling on a budget, what does that mean to you?
What that sounds to me is having the time of your life, having a ball, having fun, but doing it within your means. Not letting social media determine how much you should spend, or anyone else for that matter, but doing what you enjoy within your means. Because in the end, are you even really having fun if you know that at the end, you can't afford this, your checks are going to bounce, you can't pay your other bills? Of course not.
Okay, I like it. So really not letting social media influence you. And I think that's really big in this day and age of tech and digital. And we spend most of our time online. Being in that particular space, I've seen it. I tell people all the time, I took a year off of corporate and spent a year as a quote unquote influencer. And some of those people, let me tell you, they post fancy things online, but they're broke in real life.
For real.
Right. So you definitely have to do things that are for you and really hold yourself accountable. So Simone, where can our listeners find you online?
So I have the podcast with my boyfriend on YouTube called Ages and Stages, where we talk about dating and stuff, and also review the show that we were on, Ready to Love. We review the more current seasons. But I really want you to subscribe and follow to my YouTube channel called Girl, Is That Legal? So it is my channel where I talk celebrity gossip, but we also talk legal celebrity drama. And I also answer viewer questions and provide some legal tips. So check it out, Girl, Is That Legal on YouTube. And you can also follow me on Instagram at Attorney Symone Redwine, and it's Simone with a Y.
Awesome. And we'll post those links in the show notes. So Simone, this has been such a good conversation, and hopefully down the road we can have you back and we can do something on video. But yeah, I want to know if there's any last words you have for listeners.
I would just say, live within your means, find happiness within your means. You can always grow. Your means can always grow. But if you're not happy, who cares how you're spending your money? Focus on your happiness first.
I hope you've enjoyed the show. Be sure to leave us a review and let us know any ideas you have for a future show topic. And if you really want to show us some love, share this episode with a friend and be sure to join our community online, milestonesmotivationandmoney.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at Milestones Motivation and Money. Tune in next time.